I still remember the day I stumbled upon the Backrooms. It was just another ordinary Tuesday evening, and I had decided to take a walk around my neighborhood to clear my head. As I strolled down the deserted street, the fading light of day cast long shadows behind the houses, making it seem like the very foundations of reality were shifting beneath my feet. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off, but I attributed it to the lingering effects of a stressful week at work. As I turned a corner, I noticed a strange, unassuming door on the side of one of the houses. It blended seamlessly into the wall, with no visible hinges or handles, and seemed to be pulling me in with an otherworldly allure. My curiosity got the better of me, and I pushed the door open, revealing a narrow corridor that stretched out into darkness. I stepped inside, feeling a shiver run down my spine as the door creaked shut behind me. The air was stale and musty, filled with the scent of decay and rot. As I walked deeper into the corridor, the walls began to warp and distort, like they were made of liquid silver that seemed to be melting away beneath my feet. I stumbled upon a series of doors, each one leading to another identical corridor. It was as if I had entered a maze with no exit, and every door I opened led me further down the rabbit hole. The sense of unease grew inside me, but I couldn't help feeling drawn to the unknown, like a moth to a flame. As I explored these twisted corridors, I started to notice strange symbols etched into the walls. They seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and I could feel their presence watching me, waiting for me to make a wrong move. It was then that I realized I was not alone in the Backrooms. Something or someone was with me, guiding me deeper into this abyss of madness. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as I continued down the corridors, the symbols grew more frequent and intense, until they seemed to be staring back at me like 1,000 cold, dead eyes. As I continued to explore the twisted corridors, I stumbled upon a small, unassuming door that seemed out of place among the others. It was slightly ajar, as if someone or something had recently passed through it. I pushed the door open, and a warm golden light spilled out, illuminating the dark corridor. The air was filled with an otherworldly scent like ozone and burning paper. I stepped inside, and the door creaked shut behind me, enveloping me in the golden glow. The room was small, with walls made of a material that looked like polished copper. In the center of the room, a large portal pulsed with an eerie energy. It seemed to be pulling me towards it, drawing me into its depths like a magnet. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I approached the portal. It was surrounded by strange symbols etched into the copper walls, which seemed to match the ones I had seen earlier in the corridors. I knew that I had stumbled upon something important, something that could lead me out of this maze-like labyrinth or take me even deeper into its heart. Without hesitation, I stepped through the portal, feeling a jolt of electricity as my feet left the copper floor behind. The world around me dissolved into chaos, and I found myself hurtling through a tunnel of swirling colors and distorted sounds. When the vortex finally subsided, I found myself standing in a vast, empty space filled with rows upon rows of doors, each one leading to who knew where. It was then that I knew I had truly entered the Backrooms. As I ventured deeper into the Backrooms, the air grew thick with an eerie silence. The only sound was the soft rustle of unknown materials beneath my feet, like the whisper of 1,000 tiny fingers. Every step felt like a betrayal, as if I was walking further away from reality with each passing moment. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched, even though I knew I wasn't alone. The doors seemed to loom over me, their surfaces reflecting the flickering fluorescent lights that lined the corridors. They were an unsettling yellow, like the color of old school buses and forgotten dreams. As I walked, the signs above the doors began to change. What was once a straightforward Room 123 now read Department of Unseen Things. The words seemed to shift, rearranging themselves into cryptic messages that made no sense. I felt a growing sense of unease as I tried to decipher their meaning. Some rooms were filled with rows upon rows of identical doors, each one bearing the same symbol, a crude drawing of a human face with eyes that seemed to stare straight through me. Others were empty, the space so vast and echoing that it felt like I was walking through an endless void. Every door I passed seemed to lead to another world, each one more surreal than the last. The corridors themselves began to warp and twist, like a funhouse mirror reflecting my own sanity. I stumbled upon a room filled with old typewriters, their keys still clacking away as if someone had recently sat down at one of them. But there was no one there. And yet the sound persisted, a maddening rhythm that seemed to drive me further into the heart of madness. As I turned a corner, I stumbled upon a figure standing in front of a door. It was humanoid in shape, but its body seemed to be made of a shifting, liquid-like material that appeared to ripple and flow like water. Its face was twisted into a grotesque grin, revealing rows of jagged teeth. The air around it seemed to distort and writhe, as if reality itself was being warped by its presence. I tried to step back, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. The figure began to move towards me, its body flowing like a wave as it approached. I could feel its gaze upon me, a cold, calculating intelligence that seemed to bore into my very soul. As it drew closer, I saw that its face was not just a twisted visage. It was also a doorway. The liquid material seemed to be made up of tiny, glowing orbs that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. They swirled around the figure's head like a vortex, drawing me in with an irresistible force. I felt myself being pulled towards the door, as if I was being drawn into its very depths. The figure reached out a hand and touched my face, and everything went white. When my vision returned, I found myself standing in a room filled with rows upon rows of identical doors. But this time, they were not just doors. They were also mirrors, reflecting infinite versions of myself back at me like a funhouse maze. The figure was nowhere to be seen, but its presence still lingered, a palpable force that seemed to fill the air with an unspeakable horror. As I stood there, frozen in terror, the corridors around me began to shift and writhe like living serpents. The doors seemed to stretch on forever, each one leading to a new maze of twisting passages and endless reflections. I tried to move forward, but my feet felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, making it hard to breathe or think clearly. I stumbled forward, trying to make sense of the labyrinthine corridors, but every door led only to more doors and more reflections, and more horrors beyond my comprehension. The mirrors seemed to stretch on forever, reflecting infinite versions of myself back at me like a funhouse maze. Some of them showed me as a child, playing in the park on a sunny day. Others showed me as an old man, frail and gray. But most of them simply reflected back nothingness, or empty space, or the endless expanse of the backrooms themselves. I wandered through the corridors for what felt like hours, trying to find a way out, but every door led only to more confusion and despair. And then, suddenly, I saw it. A door that was not just a door, but a window into another dimension. It glowed with an otherworldly light and seemed to pulse with the same energy as the mirrors. I knew instinctively that this was the way out, or at least the way back to sanity. But as I reached out to touch the door, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder and a voice whispering in my ear, "You'll never leave." I stepped through the doorway, and into a hall that seemed to stretch on forever. The air was thick with whispers, a constant susurrus of voices that seemed to come from all directions at once. At first, I couldn't make out what they were saying, but as I walked deeper into the hall, the words began to take shape. Get out while you still can. You'll never escape. The backrooms will consume you. The whispers grew louder and more urgent, until it felt like the very walls of the hall were screaming at me. I tried to cover my ears, but they only seemed to make the whispers grow louder. I stumbled forward, desperate to find a way out, but every step seemed to lead me deeper into the heart of the labyrinth. The whispers grew more and more distorted, until it sounded like someone was trying to speak in a language I couldn't understand. BBBRRRZZZ. GGGGLL MMMMPPPHHHHHTTT. The words blurred together, a maddening cacophony that seemed to sear itself into my brain. I felt like I was losing my mind, the whispers driving me closer and closer to the edge of sanity. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the whispers stopped. The hall fell silent except for the sound of my own ragged breathing. I stood there, frozen in terror, wondering what had happened next. But as I looked around, I saw that the hall was still there, waiting for me. And the whispers were waiting too, patiently biding their time until they could start up again. As I stood there, frozen in terror from the whispers of the hall, I noticed a figure standing just beyond the edge of the light. It was tall and imposing, its presence seeming to draw the very air out of the room. The figure's face was deathly pale, with sunken eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. But it was not the face that caught my attention. It was the way the figure seemed to blend seamlessly into the shadows around it. It was as if it had been carved from the very darkness itself, and was now standing before me in all its shadowy glory. The figure took a step closer, its movements eerily silent. "You're lost," it said in a voice that was barely above a whisper. "You don't know how to find your way out of here." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and my voice caught in my chest. The shadowy figure took another step closer, its eyes never leaving mine. "I can help you," it said, its voice dripping with an otherworldly sweetness. "I can guide you through the backrooms, show you the secrets that lie within." I felt a shiver run down my spine as the figure reached out a shadowy hand and touched my shoulder. It was cold to the touch, like the darkness itself had come alive and was now touching me. "Follow me," it said, its voice low and hypnotic. "I'll show you the way out." The shadowy figure led me deeper into the backrooms, its presence seeming to grow stronger with every step. The air grew colder and darker, until it felt like I was walking through a void. I tried to keep up with the figure, but it seemed to be constantly shifting and flowing like a liquid. I stumbled and fell, skinning my knee on the cold, damp floor. But as I looked up at the figure, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Its face was no longer just a shadowy visage. It was now a mirror image of myself, staring back at me with eyes that were identical to mine. "You're not who you think you are," it said, its voice echoing in my mind. "You're not even sure what's real and what's not." I felt a creeping sense of dread as the figure continued to lead me deeper into the labyrinth. Every step seemed to take me further away from reality, until I wasn't sure what was real and what wasn't. The walls seemed to blur and shift around me, like they were made of some kind of liquid that could change shape at will. I stumbled and fell again, this time landing hard on my side. As I looked up at the figure, I saw something that made my heart stop. It was a door that led out of the backrooms and back into the real world. But as I looked closer, I realized that it was just an illusion. The door was made of the same shimmering, iridescent material as the walls around me. It was just another trick of the backrooms, designed to keep me trapped forever. "You'll never escape," the figure said, its voice echoing in my mind. This is your home now." As I looked up at the figure, I realized that it was no longer a guide. It was my own shadow self, come to claim me as its own. And with that realization, everything went black. The room was small and dimly lit, with walls lined with old photographs and forgotten trinkets. The air was thick with the scent of decay and neglect. I wandered through the space, my footsteps echoing off the walls as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Each photograph showed a different person. Some were smiling, others were crying, but none of them seemed to belong to me. I saw images of families long gone, children who had never grown up, and lovers who had lost their way. The room was filled with the memories of strangers, each one more poignant than the last. I stumbled upon a dusty old piano in the corner of the room, its keys yellowed with age. As I ran my fingers over the surface, I felt a sudden jolt of recognition. It was as if I had played this very piano before but couldn't quite remember how. The memories came flooding back, fragments of childhood songs and forgotten melodies. I sat down on the bench, feeling the cool wooden surface beneath me. As I placed my fingers on the keys, the room began to fade away, replaced by a montage of images from my own past. I saw myself as a child, playing with friends in a sun-drenched park. I saw myself as a teenager, laughing with loved ones at a family gathering. And I saw myself now lost and alone, wandering through the backrooms in search of something I couldn't quite remember. The music swelled and grew louder until it was almost deafening. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. I sat there, frozen, as the room began to rebuild itself around me. The photographs disappeared, the trinkets fell silent, and the air was once again filled with the scent of decay and neglect. I stood up, feeling a sense of disorientation wash over me. Where had I been? What had I just seen? And what did it all mean? Sequence 10. Echoes of terror. The whispers in the darkness grew louder and more menacing. They seemed to be coming from all directions, swirling around me like a vortex of fear. I tried to cover my ears, but they were already ringing with the cacophony. The words themselves were indistinguishable, but the tone was unmistakable, a cold, calculated malevolence that made my skin crawl. I stumbled forward, desperate to escape the sound. But it seemed to be everywhere, echoing off the walls and ceiling like a chorus of demonic voices. I felt like I was being herded towards some unknown fate, driven by an unseen force that reveled in my terror. The whispers grew louder still until they were almost deafening. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of sound, unable to breathe or think. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, the words began to take shape. "You'll never escape," they hissed. "You'll never be free." The voice was mine own, but it wasn't. It was something else, something ancient and evil. I tried to scream, but my voice was trapped in my throat. I tried to run, but my legs were rooted to the spot. All I could do was stand there, paralyzed with fear, as the whispers grew louder still. The darkness seemed to be coalescing into something tangible, taking shape before my eyes like a living thing. It was a creature of sound and shadow, born from the very essence of terror itself. And it was coming for me, its presence suffocating, crushing me beneath its weight. I felt my mind begin to unravel, thread by thread, as the whispers consumed me whole. I was trapped in a living nightmare with no escape in sight. The last thing I heard was the voice, whispering a single word in my ear: "Mine." I trudged up the staircase, my feet heavy with fatigue. The steps seemed to stretch on forever, curving upward in a seemingly endless spiral. As I climbed, the air grew colder and the shadows deepened, until it was as if I was walking through a tunnel of darkness. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease that had been building inside me all day. But with every step, my sense of disorientation grew stronger. The staircase seemed to be moving, its steps shifting and reforming beneath my feet like a living thing. I stumbled, catching myself on the railing as the world around me blurred and swirled. I looked down at the stairs, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The steps were covered in old photographs, each one showing a different person, all of them smiling and happy. But there was something wrong about the pictures, something that didn't quite add up. They seemed stolen, as if they had been taken from someone else's life without their consent. I kept climbing, my heart pounding in my chest. The staircase seemed to be getting steeper, the steps narrowing until I was almost crawling on all fours. I could feel the weight of the world bearing down on me, as if I was being slowly crushed beneath its oppressive bulk. The photographs grew more frequent, each one showing a different person, each one with the same look of sadness and longing on their face. I realized that they were all victims of some terrible fate, trapped in this endless staircase forever. I stumbled to my feet, my legs shaking with exhaustion. But as I looked around, I saw that the staircase was still moving, its steps twisting and turning like a living serpent. And at the top, just out of sight, I could see a figure waiting for me, a figure with a face that was identical to one of the people in the photographs. I took another step forward, my heart pounding in my chest, and then I realized that I was running out of options. The staircase seemed to be closing in on me, its steps narrowing until there was only one way left to go. I took one final step, and then I was climbing up into the darkness with no escape in sight. As I reached the top of the endless staircase, I finally understood the true nature of the Backrooms. It was not just a labyrinthine network of rooms and corridors, but a manifestation of humanity's collective psyche. Every person who had ever felt lost, alone, or trapped in their own thoughts and emotions had contributed to its growth. The whispers I had heard were not just echoes of fear, but the voices of those who had been consumed by their own darkness. The figure at the top of the staircase was not a person, but a representation of my own inner demons. It was the sum total of all my fears, doubts, and regrets. And as I looked into its eyes, I saw my own reflection staring back at me. I realized that the Backrooms was not just a physical place, but a metaphor for the human condition. It was a reminder that we are all trapped in our own personal labyrinths, and that sometimes the only way to escape is to confront the darkness within ourselves. The figure began to speak, its voice echoing in my mind. "You will never leave," it said, "but you can try to find peace." And with that, the staircase began to dissolve, like sand between my fingers. I felt myself being pulled back down into the depths of the Backrooms. But this time, I was not alone. I had the knowledge that I could face my fears, and that I would always have the whispers of those who came before me as guides. I emerged from the Backrooms, blinking in the bright light of day. I was no longer the same person who had entered all those days ago. I had been changed by my experiences, transformed by the secrets I had uncovered. And as I looked around at the world outside, I knew that I would never see it in the same way again.